Okay. Okay, today we have a double portion for our reading. Okay. Matot-Masei, tribes and journeys. What do we have for a common theme in our reading?
Trying to go back on God.
Sorry, what?
He said turning their back on God.
Turning their back on God, yeah. Or an old famous song, Straighten Up and Fly Right. Obviously, you guys are much too young for that. I remember that song. Huh? Keeping vows, yeah. If you promise to follow God, don't you think you should follow through on that? Yeah.
Well, you said common themes.
Common theme, yeah. If there's a common theme between the Torah reading, the Haftarah, and the Shabbat readings, what you got? Give it to me. Let me have it. English. All right. Any questions, comments, or reviews with regard to what we read? Got any questions? Got any thoughts? Something that struck you as important, or something that you swore you've never seen before in all the years you've been reading? It happens all the time. Very good. Guilty saying that God seems to provide and has things. She's sleeping because she sees things that she's never seen before. I think we all have that same thing. So, questions, comments, rebukes even.
And they have a silly question, but
We should have given you silly answer.
what kind of vow can a daughter make that her father or a woman make it with her husband disapprove? If it's God's will.
Okay, well, she goes out and signs a contract to buy a car.
Like what?
A car.
Oh,
Okay? And she gets home and Dad says, Masei,
yes.
what's this? You know? And she says, oh, it's my new car. And he says, okay, how are you going to pay for this? Get it. So that's how I know that. Okay, he says that's what sugar to take it back. Okay?
But what I'm trying to say, guys, is my question would be like, but a wise woman would not make a vow that is not God's will, right? It's God's will. What would he say? What would he disapprove?
Okay, you're
That's my question.
assuming you're getting into a contract and making a promise is actually following God's will. Okay.
But a wise woman would do that.
Yes, but notice it never gives her the description of wise.
Okay. I was just wondering
Okay.
that. Okay.
So that's why God said that the husband or the father has the right to override a contractual or a promise made by a woman, a young woman or a married woman. To actually, in a way, it's a level of protection for her.
I guess I thought that when you make a vow, it's actually the responsibility, not the father or not the. That's why I didn't understand why would he do this. She make a vow, and that put her to make that payment as an example, and not someone else. That's what I thought a vow would be. It's on the person who makes a vow, not someone else.
The difficulty is a young girl who's living at her father's house. What assets does she have to accomplish what she's promised? Okay, she has to use her father's assets. Okay, in a traditional culture of that day, what assets does a wife have that she can do her own business?
That makes sense.
Okay, without using the husband's assets. Okay, so he's got a voice in it. He definitely has a voice in it. And I think that was the point. And the point, this is a way of, when we get into Deuteronomy, when we taught through Deuteronomy, I always kept saying, these are God's instructions for a peaceful and prosperous society. And this is one of those sets of instructions that make a peaceful and prosperous society so that people aren't taken advantage of, that people have the means to complete what they've promised. And it protects a class of women, two classes of women, from the consequences of making a decision that they maybe didn't completely think through. Guys, how many of us have ever signed a contract that we really wish we didn't? Okay, the problem is we don't have anyone to back up on it. We don't have anyone to look over and say, no, get rid of that, it's a dumb idea.
Timeshare.
And so, timeshares.
Stuck with.
Yeah. And that's really, so try to think of it less as oppression on women as it is protection from a bad decision. And you know, says, go ahead and get it.
I do have a question. I know when you make the way I looked at it, when you make a vow to the Lord, you make a vow to the Lord, and you're going to have to stick to it. So, but when you make a vow with somebody else, you can receive it somehow or another. There's clauses and contracts and so forth. Don't stick to it. But that's a different issue. I didn't have a question with that. My question is, the daughter, you were saying about the daughter, and what happens to her when she cannot fulfill her vow? What happens to the widow? In the scripture, it says the widow, her work was sad.
She's on her own, yeah.
But so therefore, in Isaiah 54, the Lord Himself has become her husband. So He takes care of her. Is that what it's meaning? I want to know because I am in that spot.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's at.
This can go in a broad range of directions because you want to talk about the widow who's simply a widow who has no assets and no one to care for them, or is it a widow who has assets and is running her own household on her own? There's various ways of looking at it. I'm not sure how I give you one answer for all of it.
What if it doesn't even has to do anything with that?
I'll give you a real short answer, which sometimes doesn't come across very polite, but God says so. And He has the ultimate wisdom as to this is what is the right way. The difficulty is we often try to filter God's commandments in what we have in our society as our set of justice and our set of right and wrong, our set of morals. Biblical morals don't always equate exactly to modern American morals. So we may think, well, this is taking advantage of a woman, or not allowing a woman to do what she really wants to do. Different society, different time, different morals. Okay? How does this apply to us today? It can still apply. Okay? For the woman who is content to live within God's structure, she's still going to have the safety net of a father or a husband to say, wait a second, what did you just do? And maybe that's not the wise thing to do. Maybe we should back out of this. And so you can look at it as a safety net. Our modern society would look at it as a strangle, a noose. but the society at that time was a safety net. So you look at it with modern morals, and even here in America today, you have wide sets of what's moral and improper. In some traditional households, it completely makes sense. The girl doesn't make any decisions of her own without checking with the father first. In other households, she's 12, she's on her own, she can do whatever she wants. She'll get in whatever trouble she wants to, that's her problem. And so we have to be aware of that our culture is different from that culture. So we have to look at it through their eyes, try to figure out what God's intent is, and see how it applies to us. We have to start with their culture. Okay. Lisa, you had
You just said what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Any other questions, comments, reviews?
At your feet. It's not gonna monitor your feet.
Oh,
Watch.
why is that just monitor my feet? I can tell you what it looks like. Wearing the shoes. Yes, we're coming.
Okay, so in chapter 31, starting at 13. Moshe, Eleazar, the Cohen, and all the community leaders went to meet them outside the camp. Moshe was very angry at the army officers, the commanders of thousands, commanders of hundreds, coming in from the battlefield. Moshe asked them, "You let the women live? Why, these are the ones who, because of Balaam's advice, caused the people of Israel to rebel, breaking faith with Adonai for incident, so that the plague broke out among Adonai's community. Now kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman who has slept with a man. But the young girls who have never slept with a man, keep alive for yourselves." Okay. So the only people that survived, one, no male, even young male, because they grew up to take revenge.
Right.
And all the married and older women that have known a man. So only young girls who have never been with a man were saved. Were not, okay? Were spared. Yeah. So later on, when it talks about the booty that they took for themselves, well, that's what it's called, booty, okay? It is people and animals. Come on. People and animals.
Well, that word has transformed.
Yeah, okay. Well,
Biblical definitions, please.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was the people and the animals. Well, the only people that fit that category were the young girls.
Right.
And they were given also to the Levi'im. Okay, well, there was a way of dividing them, you know, the portion of what they collected, of people and animals and of gold and of, you know, part of it went eventually to the Levi'im. So were these girls servants?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, they could have been brought in to a family as a slave or as a family member.
or as a family member. So that's kind of
Would
what
have been the individual.
because they can't serve in the temple.
No,
No,
not the girls, but they could serve the families
they can serve
in their own
the temple.
homes.
Because that's what I was wondering about. How did they were servants, or like you said, could they marry the girls when they got older or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, because they would have been absorbed into humanity eventually. Eventually they would have had some sort of equal stature. Eventually.
So they would have children.
Since they're born within Israel, they would be brought up as part of Israel.
Part of Israel is different that are considered slaves. So that's two different things, right?
Right. God gave commandments about slavery, but He never said go out and do it. He acknowledges that it happened. He never cheered people on to it. Okay, any other questions, comments, reviews?
And if the slaves had children, their children would be the Ishmael and not necessarily be
Again, there's a very broad potential for answers there because there are many different circumstances. That a slave married a slave, and a slave married an Israelite. Was that person free? Was she freed before she married an Israelite? And became part of Israel. So there's a lot of ifs in there that need to be answered before you get a conclusion. Because technically, slaves that are not Jewish were considered property to be passed down from father to son. But if you release them or if they marry out, then they would be considered part of Israel.
So
Yes.
I was wondering, why in this case particularly, God he allowed the Israelites to keep all the plunder, all the gold, all the silver, but unlike another kingdoms that they completely destroyed, he didn't allow them to keep anything at all.
Yeah. This was they're all a case by case basis. There are times, the first battle, once they got to the land, was Jericho. And God said, don't keep a thing, all that belongs to Him. In essence, it's a first fruits offering to God. Okay. Here, that wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. So He said, keep the plunder that you gather. And I'm totally astounded by the numbers, of what they brought back from this. And I have to think it must have taken them days or weeks to collect everything, because hundreds of thousands of sheep and goats and stuff.
Yeah.
And there was only how many guys? 12,000 went out.
12,000, right?
And they're collecting,
More than
about 1 million head of cattle. By the time you count it all, some kind of livestock. And those guys must have either had wagon trains that went for miles, or they took trips. They went back and forth and back and forth. And they did it in a matter of days. We read it like it all happened in one day, but it may have taken several days, or even weeks and months for them to complete the process. But I just can't see anybody collecting that much stuff in one trip. You got to be kind of a Samson-sized character to have, 40,000 sheep and donkeys and goats and stuff that you're pulling by a rope yourself, and all the other stuff that you load. So my organizational anxiety, this must have taken longer than 1 day. It doesn't read as if it's longer. It just reads like it happened, and we're kind of left assuming that it all happened in one sitting. David.
I don't understand what's going on with the tax, the levy that's being given. Maybe I'm just misreading it wrong, but 1 in 100 was supposed to be the Lord's tax.
Yeah.
But so, for example, of the 30,500 donkeys, only 61 went to the Lord. That's not 100.
I think it's 1 in 500.
Okay, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay, now, what about the Lord, the human beings? It says, and the human beings were 16,000. Earlier, I seem to remember it was 32,000. The virgin women, the virgin girls.
Yeah. When they were divided, or before they were divided.
Well, there were 32,000 people in all, but then they divided between 16,000 for the soldiers, 16,000 for the people. So that's how.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So that wasn't even for the Lord then. That was just between the soldiers and the people.
Okay, so what exactly, what is the levy? I mean, this is going to the temple?
Yeah, this is what would have been sacrificed to God in gratitude for this victory. So actually, it was a very, very small percentage.
Right, so 32,
1 in 50, 1
of the
in
girls would go to serve the
10 or something like that. I don't know if the people were separated like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, they were.
Okay.
Yeah.
The idea is that they would not have been sent to be human sacrifices on the altar, but rather they were given to the Levites as house servants.
So they become the Levites.
New family members or house servants.
Now, however, in 48, it says the officers in charge of thousands who fought, the commanders of thousands, the commanders of hundreds, approached Moshe and said to him, your servants have counted all the soldiers under our command, and not one of us is missing. Okay, so no one was killed. We have brought an offering for Adonai, what every man has obtained in the way of gold jewelry, armlets, bracelets, signet rings, earrings, and belts, to make atonement for ourselves before Adonai. Now, that's separate from what this levy is.
Yeah, this was a voluntary offering by the soldiers. Now, and this was But think about it, a major operation of 12,000 people going to battle against another group of people and not a single casualty.
Right.
That's unheard of.
Exactly.
You have accidents that kill dozens of people just to get to the battle, right? And especially back then, of course, in Israel, the sanitary conditions are much better, but marching in an army was a horrible thing to do. It was very unsanitary, it was very stressful on your body. It took a long time to get there. You weren't fed enough, usually. So by the time you get there, you're starved, you're tired, and you're diseased. And this, doesn't make for a very strong army. But here, Israel seemed to have done very well. Of course, living under better sanitary conditions make a big, big difference. And this group was much closer than your average march to go battle somebody. So they were in much better condition physically. And of course, God fights on their side. So the curious thing is that here you have 12,000 people and not a single casualty. Okay? And so they're going, whoa! So what do they give? Now think carefully about what they're giving as their thank you to God for having brought them all through safely. What is it that they're giving? More specifically, what exact items are they giving?
Gold.
Okay. What else? More details as it comes out.
Jewelry.
Jewelry. What's on the jewelry?
Stone. Metal.
Okay. What's the symbolism on the jewelry?
Oh, okay.
What's the symbolism on the rings?
Your gods?
What's the symbolism on the earrings? What's the symbolism on all the other junk that they're saying, God, you get this because you proved yourself better than all of them?
So they're in the
We're giving up stuff that was dedicated to a pagan god or a pagan ideology and saying, God is superior to all this. We don't want this in our houses. So they give it to God. And basically, it's God's booty for having knocked out the gods of the Midianites.
Well, even the wording, it says that they made atonement for themselves.
You're enjoying that way too much. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's what it's also saying is that it's to make atonement.
And that's curious, to make atonement. As if they've done some sin. You would think that the terminology would have been, this is a praise offering or a thank you or something like that. The atonement there is you have to treat it like it's functional. This is a thank you for, or maybe atonement. Let me think of this.
Well, is this verse 54?
Okay, if you're taking jewelry and stuff that's got pagan symbols and pagan gods on them, and you're taking them home. Okay, you're keeping them for yourself. Okay, when you get home, you realize, there was a really great miracle here because none of us are dead. I don't want this anymore. So you're atoning for the fact that you held on to pagan junk.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, so you're saying, okay, God, we're giving this to you because it's really clear now there ain't nothing there that I want. In the way of the symbols and the meanings behind them. And so, in that sense, yeah, an atonement. Forgive us for hanging on to this false god stuff. Maybe that's one way to look at it.
That's interesting. That's the first time I've ever heard this in a church-type situation.
Sorry.
No. But
Something that I feel happy.
Something that I've been talking about for years, and I always get strange looks from people, is in overcoming. Okay, I've found that when I approach the Lord in prayer, I take those things and I put it on the altar in my prayer. I give them to God and then look for ways to be obedient. And it seems like that's what they're doing here based on what you were saying. And I think that's neat.
Yeah.
It's like, it's good.
Okay, anything else in our reading? Anything else in our core portions?
honestly was lost in the readings this week. I didn't know what to think.
It's okay.
So I'm looking for wisdom. And some has come out.
Okay. I got the negotiation, chapter 32, verse 6. I always get a kick at how the negotiations go on between God and Moses, or between Moses and other people, or between other people and other people. Verse 6, chapter 32. Moses said to the children of Gad and to the children of Reuben, "Shall your brethren go to war while you sit here? Now why will you discourage the heart of the children of Israel from going into the land as the Lord has given them? Thus your fathers did when I sent them away from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. But when they went up to the valley of Eshcol, they saw the land, they discouraged the heart of the children of Israel, so they did not go into the land as the Lord had given them. So the Lord's anger was aroused on that day, and he swore an oath, surely none of the men who came up from Egypt, from 20 years old and above, shall see the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because they had not wholly followed me, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and the Kenizzite, and Joshua the son of Nun, for they have wholly followed the Lord. So the Lord's anger was aroused against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, and all generations done evil in the sight of the Lord his God. Look, you have risen in your father's place a brood of sinful men, to increase still more the fierce anger of the Lord against Israel. For if you turn away from following him, he will once again leave them in the wilderness, and you will destroy all these people." You know, for a guy who's about ready to die tomorrow, he's sure long-winded.
Yes.
So what was it, where was it Debbie said, behold, I'm a man of slow tongue and slow speech. And it said, Abraham said that, he said, well, that was Moses. And Debbie says, remember the slow tongue, he sure didn't say a lot. And this is Moses, the guy with the slow tongue, right? And you got to think, if you're representatives of Gad and Reuben, and represented half the tribe of Manasseh, who would also be on the east side of the river. And you think that, man, this guy is just going on and on and on. Okay? So how is it that wanting to have our land over here is such a big problem? And so Moses negotiates by taking a very extreme position over here, saying, you guys are going to cause the children of Israel to all perish because you want that land. Okay? And so they're going to be over here say, what? So no, we don't want to do that. And then they come to this middle ground and saying, tell you what, you guys will go with us into battle. Put your kids up in your families and kids up in fenced walled areas that's defensive position. And all the guys go and they make war like they should to rescue the land for all the other tribes. When that's done, you can come home and claim your own property. And the guy said, going from here to here, they're saying, okay, we'll do that. Okay. Moses may be learning a little something from God, because when the children of Israel sinned, what was the first thing that God said? I'm going to wipe them out. And Moses says, wait. Yeah, they sinned, but you promised. So God says, okay, they deserve to die, but I will be merciful and not kill them off just yet. Okay. Yeah. And so you see this negotiation. So Moses learned a little bit in negotiating with God, because he takes this totally polar version. And you guys are only interested in yourself. You want everybody else to die miserably, and you're not going to lift a finger to help anybody. And so Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh say, well, wait a second, whoa, that's not the case. And so eventually they work out this deal where they're going to go fight, and it all works out. So Moses learned a little bit, learned a little bit from negotiating with God. You take a super extreme position, you can let people negotiate you into the position that you want to end up with in the first place. In insurance claims, we used to call that the dance. Somebody would be the high end, and making the band low end, or making an offer, and somewhere in the middle, you dance up to you finally come to a conclusion. So, That's an overly superficial explanation, but that's essentially what we call it. It's the dance. When somebody asks about the status of the case, we're in the dance right now. Talking numbers and getting down to where you can settle the case. Well, that's the same thing. Moses did the dance. He went over here, they went and they came to a middle ground and came to a conclusion that they could both live with. So it's negotiation, and I've been seeing that lately more and more. A lot of these interactions are just negotiations. So,
But again, I guess in a way it makes sense, and if we apply the logic also, besides God's command, because to move such a big number of cattle heads, and the country actually was propitious for cattle to go upstream.
that's probably why they had so many.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cattle country. Kind of like West Texas. You just see the tribes running through the town, running through the area, and you got this music in the background. The Magnificent 12.
Yeah, so what exactly do that some Jewish cowboys look like?
Yes. Well, we're out on the prairie, so we're lost in I can't remember enough of the song. Yeah, we dine on 2 sets of dishes.
That's perfect.
What's that?
147.
147 best gun.
In the
Yeah,
West.
that's a different song. That's
141.
okay. Thank you.
You brought it up.
Hey, yes, I did. Well, thank you. All right. Okay. Anything else on our reading in the Torah portion?
I have a question concerning Caleb.
Yes.
Caleb was the son of Yefune Kenizi. What's Kenizi?
Could be. We have to look at the genealogy. Could be a grandfather or great grandfather, a family name. Not necessarily, a family name rather than a tribe. Because he's Caleb is of Judah, is he not?
Yeah.
He's from Judah. So,
okay, the reason why I asked this question because, people have joined themselves to different tribes that came out of Egypt. I just wondered, was he a native born or was he?
yeah, he's identified as the tribe of Judah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, to be a Kenizzite would have been somewhere in his ancestral line, a family name. And remember, things were family and tribe and aligned as such.
32.
Well, yeah. It's not that he's a foreigner, although some people have commented that he's a foreigner
Kind of what I
because of
heard.
this.
That's why I'm
The problem is, you go back to his original introduction and it says that he's from Judah.
Yeah.
Okay. Keniz, whatever that family, that person's name. I think if we can find a genealogy for Judah, I think you'll find it.
Oh, okay.
That's my guess. I haven't taken the time to look at that, but that would be my guess. You're going to find this guy's name in the genealogy between Judah and him.
All right.
Okay. All right. Okay, anything else in our reading for the Torah portion? Okay, the section goes to all the places they camped. One thing you have to realize, there's only about 40 places, and there's only about 40 years. And so that's, if you average that out, that's once a year you move the camp. 42, thank you. Yeah, which may or may not be the case. They may have moved several times in a matter of a couple of weeks, and maybe they stayed at one place. Remember, Sinai, they stayed for what, 2 years? They were there 2 years before they moved. And that's kind of on this list. So, Oh, that's what I forgot to do. Chapter 34 is the border of the land that God had promised to them. Yeah, I don't know a thing about these place names. Interesting though, most all the borders that God gives have the northern part of Israel going all the way through Lebanon into Syria and down to bordering on the Euphrates. So I didn't do that this time around, but check all the place names to see if that carries on even in this description. If all that territory was deeded to Israel even back then.
He said, to the border of Euphrates, I thought they included that river too.
It came, as far as I know, it says to the Euphrates. I don't think it says it on this list, though. It doesn't say Euphrates here. So, yeah. But there's a couple other places where God sets out the borders of Israel, and the whole northern end goes all the way up and over towards into Assyria. All through Lebanon and into Syria, taking a huge chunk of what is Syria. And all that's eventually going to be Israel by God's definition. And most all the other descriptions include the Euphrates as part of the northern border. Just curiosity.
Now that, so the Euphrates all the way to the east?
Yeah. Yeah, well, okay. We always, for me, I always think of Euphrates all the way over in Iraq.
Right.
It's way away. But by the time you go up the, did I get this right?
Cuts towards the west.
Yeah. If you go up the east side of the Mediterranean, there's only a short distance between the northeast side of the Mediterranean and the Euphrates. It's a very short distance, and it's fairly low and level. As a matter of fact, when Jeremiah, last week's reading, that pot that was facing south, facing away from the north, instead of the calamity would come from the north, in actuality, it came from the east. Okay, because it came up from Syria up to the Mediterranean, and then down the Mediterranean, which would be from the north, as to Israel, even though technically it originated pretty much due east.
Which is actually Abraham took the same route.
Yeah, that's the same route that Abraham would have taken. It's called the Fertile Crescent.
Right.
Because the land is flat enough, and it's low enough, it's good farmland all the way up and over the ground. Down to Israel. Okay. Then again, we talk about the cities of refuge. A few other details are added in the city of refuge. One, if you accidentally kill someone, you run to these cities and you start the process of having a trial where it is determined whether or not the priests who are living in the city are the judges, and they will judge whether or not they believe this was accidental or deliberate. If it's deliberate, they set the guy into the hands of the avenger of blood. He can do whatever he wants. If they declare that he's innocent, he has to stay within that city of refuge until the high priest dies. Now, why do you have to wait until the high priest dies?
Always a question every year.
Yeah.
So a sentence?
What's that?
Isn't that kind of like a sentence?
Yeah, it's a sentence, but why, if you're innocent, why'd you be made to wait? What if this guy just became high priest, he's in his 40s, he's got 30 years before he's going to die? Why this? Well, part of what happens, and this is from tradition, but you're kind of half assuming that this is going on from the beginning, because by the way this particular commandment is stated, is that if somebody had a decision concerning a capital case, that the decision of the local court was always promoted to the Sanhedrin, the high court. Okay. Well, in that case, they didn't have the Sanhedrin; they had the priests. So the high priest would have been the last one to make a decision: he's innocent or he's guilty. Okay. And what happens if this high priest makes the wrong decision and the guy's actually guilty but he's declared innocent? Okay. What it is, in a funny kind of way, is all this guy's decisions die with him. Good or bad, right or wrong, they all die with him. And so the person stays in the city of refuge until the high priest dies, and then he can come out and be free. Okay. That's my best understanding of it. Someone may have a better idea, but that's my take. Okay. Okay. And then we finally end up our whole section, the whole book, with once again revisiting Zelophehad and his daughters. And it was just a little piece of accounting wisdom. You know, God said, you know, yeah, okay, these girls, because they don't have a brother, they don't have, you know, the father doesn't have a son, these girls will inherit the property. Everyone's happy until they start thinking about it. What if she marries someone that's not in the tribe of Matot-Masei? Then that little spot that she's going to get for her property is going to belong to some other tribe. And this is going to be an accounting nightmare as time goes on and more of this happens. You're going to have spots of one tribal territory actually being owned by another tribe. And even come the Yovel, when the rightful return of all property is still not going to get fixed. So they bring this to God and say, hey God, we thank you for the idea, but we didn't think about this and this, so what do you say about that? And he says, you know, you're right. It's funny how it's written. He says, yeah, you're right. So there's two conditions. One, the woman can marry whomever they want to, but it has to be someone within their tribe or family. Which means basically anybody in Matot-Masei would have counted, but according to the text, they all married within the extended family of the father, rather than going even farther out through the farther reaches of the tribal family. But they kept the property in tribal, so everything's cool. Okay, questions, comments, reviews on the Torah portion. Okay, let's take a look at the Haftarah Yirmiyahu. Okay, chapter 2, starting at verse 4:28. Now, one of the things you might want to ask, and why I didn't include the additional readings for the Ashkenaz and the Sephardic readings that are added onto, well, if you read those, you find out that there are words of God that they put in there for your comfort and your the rest of your soul, which is the complete opposite of the intent of this reading. The intent of this reading is to say, you guys have messed up, you've chased after things that aren't your God, you get to live with the consequences of what you've done, and that's how it ends. Okay? Which is, kind of a real bummer. So the religious tradition develops it, no, we got to end on a positive light. So they added a couple extra readings, an extra reading that says, oh, everything's wonderful, God loves you, and peace. And the Ashkenaz chose one verse, the Sephar chose another verse. But either ones really don't belong to the actual intent of our section here. And this section is actually rather negative. It's rather negative because it says, I have everything very nicely set up with you, and even though it's a little bit myopic, God chooses to use sort of a rosy picture of the children of Israel in the wandering. Oh, how you were, so much in love. We were so much in love during the wanderings in the wilderness, and if we remember anything the last couple of weeks, it's anything but rosy. But this is how God's choosing to remember it. To these people, everything was wonderful. You had, you got what you needed. Life is good. God took care of you. But then you went after other things that weren't God, and to the point of a fairly graphic, rude commentary about laying yourself out in front of every tree or every statue, doing things that anger God because they're not Him. And all the good stuff that God gave them, they attributed to their many gods. Okay. So God is saying, okay, enough. You're going to blow the whistle. You're going to get out of the pool. Okay. And the Syria, the southern kingdom missed the expulsion by the Assyrians, but they're going to get thumped by the Babylonians. And so you have this picture. So, and I think Elishave and I both share the same level of sarcasm, where the section ends up getting into some rather crude references to Israel about their wantonness, chasing anything, just anything that isn't God. Okay? Where am I here? Chapters. I'm in the wrong spot. Verse 28. Yeah. But where are your gods that you have made for yourselves? Let them arise. If they save you in the time of your trouble, for according to the number of your cities are your gods of Judah. Okay. Actually, say before that. Saying to a tree, you are my father. Right. Yeah. And to a stone, you gave birth to me. For they have turned their back to me, and not their face, which again is a group commentary. Which, by the way, if you ever want to argue with somebody over why Jerusalem is not a holy city to the Muslims, what do they do with the Dome of the Rock? They point their butts to Jerusalem, and their face towards Mecca. Okay, if it was a holy site, would they be doing that?
No.
Was it a truly holy site? Would they be doing that? No. Okay. So they turn their back to me and not their face. But in the time of trouble, in their trouble, they will say, "Arise and save us." So God's sarcasm, but where are your gods that you have made for yourselves? Let them arise, if they can save you in the time of your trouble. For according to the number of your cities are your gods, O Judah. So it's kind of like traveling from city to city on the road, and every town has a 7-Eleven or a Circle K or something like that. And every single store would have its own set of gods that you can purchase and work with. Okay? Actually, they kind of still do. They just call it the Slurpees. Oh, thank you. But God is saying, okay, you guys you turned your back on me, you worship these other things, you do all sorts of crude, evil things with your gods. Let's see how they do. Okay. Now, part of what we have to understand is the history. Jeremiah was a prophet to whom? When? Not Northern Kingdom. He's talking to Israel, but where was he? To whom was he speaking?
Speaking to Yehuda.
To the Southern Kingdom. Where was the Northern Kingdom at this time? They're gone. They're gone. They're already gone. Okay? So, when he's saying Israel, he's talking about the corporate whole of everybody that's, from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All of Israel. And it's a commandment to everybody. This is, you're doing all the wrong things. Go ahead, let your God save you. And so he's talking to people that have observed the Northern Kingdom, generally called Israel, was taken away in 3 separate times, 3 separate invasions and taking people away. Okay. Well, maybe, Jeremiah because it was 120 years.
He was prophesying about the invasion of the north, coming from the north.
Which would have been Babylon. Yeah. I come to think of it, because it was about 120 years, I think, from Israel being taken away, the Northern Kingdom, and Judah being destroyed with Nebuchadnezzar. So Jeremiah couldn't have been quite that young. But it would have been a little bit after, sometime after that. He started very young, but it would not have been likely for him to be alive during that first. Even though he's using remember, just to add the confusion to things, when the prophets talk about Israel, sometimes they're talking about the northern tribes, but sometimes they're talking about the southern tribes, and sometimes they're talking about all of them. So you have to look at the context to figure out to whom is he really speaking.
But sometimes the confusion comes about when he's talking about Israel and Judah, is that some people still adhere to the idea of the lost 10 tribes. So there was 10 tribes that was gone and everyone else was Judah. So, but the fact of the matter is, when they started the shenanigans in the north, a great many of the Levites went back south and went back to Judah. And also some of the other tribes went back south. So when Nebuchadnezzar did come and took away what we know as Judah, calling it the 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, when they took them away, all the tribes were represented. So therefore, when Jeremiah was prophesying, he was prophesying to the whole house of Israel, they were all represented. And when you get to the New Testament, you find them taking Yeshua to the temple, and there's Anna there from the tribe of Asher. Now, unless she was the only one that didn't get lost.
And managed to maintain her identity
Yeah.
as one person.
Yeah, she's the only. I mean, so therefore, they were all represented.
Yeah, they're all.
So when he says Israel, he's talking to Israel, and not only to the descendants of Abraham, but the people that attach themselves to him.
And it's kind of funny because another note on the two house stuff, which is wrong. Their statement is when the 10 northern tribes were scattered by the Assyrians, they intermingled with all the Gentile groups that were around them and they were completely lost. Well, I have an issue with that. Because just because they're not living in the land doesn't mean that they automatically intermarry with absolutely anything and keep no Jewish identity. We have a great case in point. It's called New York. Right? They're living out of the land, yet do you have, so let's go to Crown Heights. Is there a palpable Jewish identity even outside the country? Outside the land? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Or just hop on the freeway and go west from downtown LA. There's a palpable Jewish presence even though they're intermixed among the Goyim. So when you have people from, what's that town in China? I don't want to say. Yeah, I want to say Shanghai, but that's wrong. No, that's chicken. Yeah. Anyways, but there are people groups that are identifiably Jewish, even though they're in amongst
The case file?
Gentiles. Kaifang, yeah, Kaifang Jews, yeah. Okay, so it's possible that God will still call identifiably Jewish people out from among the nations. In fact, that's what he said he's going to do. He didn't say a mixed multitude. He didn't say he's calling the nations who somehow intermixed. He said he's calling his people, which is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
The biggest issue I have with the lost 10 tribes is that how is God losing?
Say it again. God is God.
Lose anything. He hides them.
But he doesn't lose them.
He's
Right.
a
He makes them lost.
He knows what they are.
If you've hidden something valuable, you know where it is. Others may not.
I don't. Not with Secret 50. That's not.
Yeah. I've been doing that a lot lately. I mean, where's my water bottle? I know I had one here.
I don't know if I ever didn't.
But that's, so anyways, it wasn't my intent to go into a long discussion about two house sets. We'll probably run into another example down the road. We'll have to deal with it. But, the bottom line being, there's not a lot of logic in that doctrine. It makes grand assumptions and then tries to prove it with their assumptions. You know, the assumptions are designed so that they're provable by their logic. It has nothing to do with reality. Anyways, anything else in Yirmiyahu? Yes, ma'am.
Never read, and you may have throughout all of the reading, and even throughout the Bible, the theme they see in it all the time is the constant aim that the Heavenly Father sustains presence.
Yeah.
As a mother and a grandmother, I see my grandchildren. It's the small things, and I can only relate in human terms. But I say to them, I took you to juice it up, and I bought you the juice, and then I bought you the nice treat, and look what you're doing. You're beating up on each other, and you tore all the piece apart, blah blah blah. And that hurts me. That when you fight with each other, when you do this, it just puts so much into my heart. And that's exactly what we did to our Heavenly Father. We just, He gives us the commandments, He does something nice, He takes the Israelites out of Egypt, and that's something that He always talks about. I took you out of the land of Egypt, I brought you through here, and I parted the sea, and look what you do.
Yeah.
He's upset, and then yet, he said, well, you go stand up in the corner, but I'm not going to do this. I'm still going to give you some ice cream later on. So that right there in my heart, it just makes me see not only the mercy and the love and the forgiveness that he has for each and every one of us, and the provisions that he does in Yeshua, but what we do, and that fills me with shame and gratitude, because as we were talking earlier today, gratitude is something that we don't seem to have all the time. We just take it for granted that he's going to take care of us, and okay, well, I just have to forgive this, and then we don't do things to please him, and getting along with each other, being nice to each other, thinking good things about each other, looking at another human being as his image, as he created us in his own image. That's what makes him happy. And God knows where else, because I am like, Peter, who says I'm the chief singer. I dispute that with him. So, but that's what I think.
Okay, good. Yeah. All right. Anything else in our reading? In your Yirmiyahu? Okay. Let's go over to Yaakov, James, chapter 4.
How do you say James in Hebrew again?
Yaakov,
As in Jacob?
as in
Yeah.
Jacob.
Yeah. Jacob?
Yep.
Really?
Really?
I take your word for it.
No, he was just kidding.
I'm going to come to you, but I'll believe anything at this point.
Yeah. This is why you have to, especially at this level, you have to be a Berean.
Well,
Prove everything.
give me 10 years.
Well, hopefully 10 years of good training. So let me know where you end up.
Gene, if you pull my leg right now, you'll be 5 miles down the road before I know you got my leg.
Well, that's... I need to be careful. Okay, where do wars and fights come from among you? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? You lust and do not have, you murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight in war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. You ask and not receive because you ask amiss, that you may spend it on your pleasures. Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Or do you think that the scripture says in vain, the Spirit who dwells in us yearns jealously, but he gives more grace. Therefore he says that God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. Okay. So, what's going on here? Why are there wars and fights? Because we want stuff. We want the big share. We want the accolades. We want our way to be done. And we're going to fight to get it. Problem is, that's not the way of God. It's not the way of God. Okay, Moses is regarded as one of the highest regarded leaders of all of the Bible. Yet it says of Moses that he was the most humble of all. Okay? Yeshua says if you want to be great in the kingdom of heaven, you must be the servant of all. The Goyim seek to be leaders and rulers over people. But Yeshua said, your greatness is shown in how you serve others, not how you're being served by others. And this is sort of a continuation. James' statement here is a continuation on that, but it's something that he saw as a particular problem in his open letter to everybody. Is, why are you having arguments? It's only because you want stuff. And it's not for God's kingdom, but for your own, what you want for yourself. Okay? So, knock it off. Okay? He goes and follows parts and calling those people adulterers and adulteresses. And that kind of puts a picture right back to what we read in Yirmiyahu, that Israel chased after everything that was a statue or a tree or something, and you did every crude thing you could to try to get on the good side of that piece of rock or that piece of wood. Okay? And here, James is saying you're doing the same thing. Okay? In this case, adulterers and adulteresses isn't necessarily just entangling in relations outside of marriage. It has to do with your spiritual adultery. What are you chasing after as God that's not God? Okay? To know this, you have to define what is God. What is God? Okay, we have the one true God, but all the other things that are called or used as God, how do you define that?
Idols.
Idols, okay, but what's their function? What do they do?
But after they serve, in essence, they serve to take the place of the real God.
Okay, take the place of the real God. What does the real God do that we should be doing rather than chasing after what a false God is?
Governing your life.
Beautiful, right there. Okay? God tells us what's right and what's wrong. God tells us how to live and how to not live. Following a false God, you start listening to that to tell you what's right and what's wrong, and it tells you how to live your life or how to not live your life. Every newspaper has a thing called a horoscope. What does that seek to do? It's supposed to tell you who you are, how to interact with people, what to do, what not to do. Is that a God?
Yes.
If you read it and take any heed to it, it's a God to you. Okay? Horoscope's a great example. Another concept is luck. Okay? What is luck?
Nice. Nice.
Okay.
Chance.
Well, we would call a random chance. Some people call luck. Okay? There's a song from music called "Luck Be a Lady Tonight." You know. But what is luck? We're trusting what to provide for us. On a mechanical level, random chance. Okay? But we're asking for luck knowing, expecting that we're going to get a little bit of an extra edge because we're appealing to luck. Now, does luck become your God?
Yes.
Yes, because it's controlling how you're thinking and what you're doing. You're betting more money than you should because you're trusting in luck to go in your favor. Okay, no matter how many times you come up wrong, you keep trusting that luck is going to turn in your favor. And so, luck is a God to you. Okay? This is why, as believers, I think part of what we need to win in the battle over vocabulary is we should never use the word luck. I got a great new job, and you say, "Whoa, that was lucky." No, that's the good hand of God. Now you've taken what God has provided, and turned it into a nameless, faceless, random chance. You're not giving God the glory. Now you're saying random chance is your God and provided for you. Okay? So, luck should never be part of our vocabulary. Yeah.
Also fortune.
Fortune, same idea. Okay? Fortune.
Okay.
I think it's transforming the blessing of God and giving it to
Something other than Him. However you define that, luck or fortune. Something else other than the living, breathing God has provided for you, and you're giving them the glory by saying, "It was really lucky that I got that job. Or really lucky that this happened." So, as believers, we should never use the word. We should always bless God for what He's provided. God did a good thing for me in giving me this job. Yes, sir?
To that same extent is the expression primarily in Jewish circles, Mazel Tov.
Uh-huh. By the way, do you know what Mazel Tov means? Enlighten.
Mazel Tov means good constellations. It's basically a throwback to the constellation or the zodiac has guided you to the place where you're at right now.
Azeroth?
Mazel tov.
I know, but you said zodiac. Isn't it
Mazeroth.
Azeroth?
Yeah, it's because the zodiac is a corruption of the Mazeroth.
Oh, so the Mazeroth is good.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
God
said he gave it to him.
Yeah. He put his message, the glory of God is revealed in the heavens, his message is in the heavens. So they had what's called the Mazeroth, and it was corrupted with this here
Zodiac.
zodiac. So for instance,
It's not about
Virgin.
Say it again, Mitch. You said something I didn't understand. Mercury?
Virgo.
Virgo.
Oh, Virgo.
Like I said, Virgo, the Virgin.
Pisces.
Leo, the Lion. Pisces.
Stinks.
But I mean, you go,
Shaken from cough.
yeah, but you go through
Constellation. They will constellation.
So,
Yeah.
perhaps that's what they were referring to.
Yeah. Well, God says in Genesis chapter 1, He gave us this for signs and seasons.
Right.
Yes.
In other words, you can see the constellations go through and you know, I'm seeing these things, so it's about time to get ready to plant.
And you have the Bethlehem
And
star.
or it's about time to harvest the fruit trees.
The Chaldeans
Yeah.
that came, or the wise men that
The
came.
wise guys, yeah.
So they were following the sign in the heavens, a star.
So,
Right, they do not rule your existence.
Say that again?
Yeah.
They do not-
They
You
do not rule or guide your existence.
Should not.
And that's why the Mazel Tov being, yeah, good constellation.
Well, then what is a sign that God will condone?
well, what I just said, the constellations, the way God designed them, is that we can have, not that we're telling the future in the sense that you need to go and,
Right.
live in La Mirada because this thing's going to happen there for you.
But the
It's not
Messiah
gonna
was
happen.
just born.
Yeah, but you're gonna look at that and say, we're coming to the season where it's time to plant. We're coming to the season where it's time to harvest such and such a produce or something. And you can tell that because of the movement of the stars in the heavens
But
at night.
from the stars, these Chaldeans that came to worship the Messiah knew the Messiah was born, or the
And
king.
they were looking for something special, and they got it.
So the thing is, that was a sign that God put there.
Yeah.
Yes.
See?
Yeah.
What the stars didn't bring forth the birth of Messiah. They foretold.
Right.
They signaled.
There's a distinction here.
Right.
If someone is saying, wishing you a Mazel Tov, and saying Mazel Tov, it's like, oh, your constellation brought that to you.
Okay. Well, this is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I pushed this off into an
Oh,
odd
no.
direction.
No, it's very good. There is a
Well,
distinction.
Shirley and I were just talking about the difference between the zodiac and the Mazeroth, because I'm just very curious. What is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Yeah. Well, the Mazeroth would be the constellations, and even what we call constellations. That's all still man-made stuff, man-made imagination that developed them. But those are still there, to let us know what the passing of time is, the passing of seasons. Okay. But it's not to tell us that, today's the day to put all your money on gold stocks.
Right.
Okay? And you don't get that kind of stuff from the stars. And an alternate explanation on Mazel Tov is the Mazel is a star, which refers to your guardian angel, which comes from Kabbalah. Your guardian angel has done good things for you. Mazel Tov. So now, who are you giving the glory to?
Okay.
Yeah, the guardian angel, not the Shem. Okay?
Which is interesting because very observant shows, when you say you can count on some kind of good luck, they will say, Baruch Hashem.
Huh?
They
Yeah.
will, hey, we got to get paid, Baruch Hashem.
And that means.
Bless-
Bless God.
Bless the name, or we praise the Lord, would be a modern
Okay.
American
So-
equivalent.
You just got a promotion. I don't say, "Oh, how lucky!" I said, "Oh, how blessed."
Yes. Yes. Give God the
And you
glory.
get a gold star.
Yeah, right.
Give God the glory, not some star, not some constellation, not some luck, God Himself.
Not happen chance.
Not happen chance. Nothing happens by accident, even though we call things accidents. Nothing happens by accident. Yeah, in a very large and complex fashion, God's in control of everything, even the stuff that we think is bad that happens to us.
My only question is, how do you myself, I try as hard as I can to be aware of these things. But how do you stop to think of certain ways and to say things in certain ways that you really realize and a year, 2 years later, they're still bothering you because you said that thing and that was wrong.
Two things. First, ask God for help. And two, as much as you can remember, fix your terminology. Eventually, you will learn a new habit where you don't refer to stars or luck or anything like that. Okay? It can't. Sometimes it has to be a learned habit. Sometimes God changes somebody's vocabulary very easy. Sometimes people have to really work at it. And most people here won't believe it, but I used to have a really foul mouth. But I had to learn to not use it, to change my terminology, and to stop and think about what I'm saying. God did not cure that of me overnight. I had to work at it. He wanted me to work at it because he wanted me to see just how ugly it is. All the stuff I used to think lightly of was really ugly. So it took me a long time, and I had to work at it. Not everybody goes through that course, but understand there is a positive end. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not just another train coming. Okay, there is a hope. There is an end, and you'll find yourself usually looking back after a while, going, I haven't used that word for a long time. You're thinking, maybe I've been fixed. Maybe I've been cured.
Well,
see,
thank your lucky star.
For instance, I would not read my horoscope because I don't think that's good. And yet, because you know what the signs are. One time I was in the hospital, and this woman came over and talked to me about something, and I gave her all the right answers, and I know about that. But then, excuse me, she said, "Oh, so what is your sign?" And I didn't get it. Right there, the trick was right there, and I was going to be trumped over it. Because when she says, "What is your sign?" I should have said to her, "The cross."
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I said, "What do you mean?"
Uh-huh.
And I said, "You're talking about horoscope or whatever." And so then I told her what my sign was, because I know what it is. But it has bothered me for the last 2 years. I kept thinking about it because that's when she left. And they said she was there to ask me all those questions, and they just tricked me right then and there. And then I felt convicted of it. And I wish that I would have been smart enough. And I want to say, what is it? The snake made me do it.
Well, it's good. It's good to bear in mind that, and I recently heard a sermon by Messianic that said, your redemption is a journey. The same way they were redeemed, the Israelites were redeemed out of Egypt, and they went on a 40-year journey before they reached the promised land. So in our redemption, remember Yeshua, this was also in the sermon, at the Last Supper, with the cup of redemption, he said, "I won't drink of this cup again until I drink it in the kingdom, when it's fulfilled in the kingdom." So our redemption will not be fulfilled till then. We're all on a journey. We've been redeemed, but we're still being redeemed. We haven't reached the goal. What did Paul say? We're pressing towards the goal. So we're pressing towards that goal. So there are no instantaneous results. You can get an instantaneous change, hard, but then you begin the journey.
Bill.
Yeah, I think a quick reply if anybody ever asks what your sign is. I know my sign. I was born under the exit sign and the return sign.
I would disagree with that.
I used to always
I've
say,
been born under the entrance sign. Eventually you get to the exit sign.
I used to always tell them when they would ask me, "What's your sign?" The dollar sign.
That is.
Okay,
Lucky charm.
let's continue on. Some very basic explanations here, verse 7. Therefore submit to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Okay? Resist the devil and he will flee from you. That is an amazingly simplistic but effective technique. Okay? If you feel like you're straining under a temptation, it's because you are not resisting. You are tasting the temptation. You are thinking about the temptation. The best way to avoid temptation is to not allow it into your thoughts. Okay? Was it Paul or somebody said that the sin comes when you see, when a desire in your heart bears fruit into thought and then into action. Okay? That's how a sin happens. It doesn't happen that it just hits you and you go, well, okay, let's go. It's because you're thinking about wanting something that you know was wrong, and then your emotions, your mind gets set up to do it, and finally when the opportunity comes, you've destroyed your own resistance. And that's how sin happens. Okay? So, get your resistance up, flee the devil, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. How do you do that? Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Okay? Cleanse your hands, you sinners. In other words, stop doing sins. And purify your hearts, you double-minded. Okay, again, don't dwell on the sin, but dwell on God. Dwell on heavenly things. If there be any good thing, if there be any praise. Okay? Think on those things. Then lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned into mourning, your joy into gloom. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. Okay? These are all good general rules about how to control sin in your life. First off, and the last bit here is, remember who you are. You deserve. Okay? Not dirt that I have the excuse to get away with sinning, but rather dirt that it's a natural thing for me to want to sin, and I have to fight that and get good at fighting it. Okay, you have to
I have a question on that. If you said that come near to God is an example of how we submit, is wash your hands an example? Purify your hearts is an example?
Yes.
How is grieve, mourn, and wail an example of submitting and resisting? Is it an example of submitting? Is it an example of resisting? How do we resist through grieving, mourning, wailing?
Okay, resisting from the temptation to dwell on whatever it is that draws you into sin. Okay. Yeshua did said something very similar in the Beatitudes. Okay. Blessed are those that hunger and thirst for righteousness. Okay. That's stated essentially in the opposite, but that's the basic idea. Okay. Grieve and mourn for your own sinfulness. Hunger and thirst for doing that which is right. Washing your hands has to do, it's a picture of a ceremonial washing. Okay? And the idea is, once you're done, your hands are clean. So, it's like washing away the yuck of the temptation in our lives so that our actions will be clean. Our actions will be holy. Are you thinking, or are you, or is that overstating things?
Well, so we want to have gloom? I mean, it says,
Okay, well, the gloom is not permanent.
so just,
The gloom is the road you have to walk through to get to the sunlight. Okay? There's a means to an end. You have to be sick and tired of the sins in your life before you're really willing to do something about it. But when you're done, you're joyful because now you're clean.
Okay. This is along the lines of what I was saying earlier. Oh, Father, I have been struggling with this. Forgive me for even the thought of what I was, wanting to do harm to that man or woman or whatever. Forgive me for this, for my anger. Father, tell me what to focus on, or I go to the Word and look for the Jews. Look for a Jew, or something that God would have me to do. And by focusing on what God wants me to do, I am taking my mind off of that which my flesh wants to do, and I'm taking the thought captive. But it begins with my repentance. Oh, God, forgive me. That's where the warning is. Father, forgive me. That's what I say, putting it on the altar. Giving it to Him and trusting Him to empower me to overcome. And what I have discovered, not that I've overcome everything, but I have overcome things, is if I put what I'm struggling with on the altar, because I stop struggling, I give it to Him. And then I proactively look for what God wants me to do. He will give me something He wants me to do. And if I'm obedient, through my obedience to God or His Word, I somehow have overcome that. He gives grace. But it's taking every thought captive.
There was a line done by a comedian a long time ago, I can't even remember his name right now, who says that he was saying that a lot of people think the Bible is a book of don'ts, but what I have found, is what guys say, is that the Bible is also a lot of do's. And if you spend your time doing the do's, you don't have the time to do the don'ts. There's kind of a humorous little twist, there's a truth there.
It's a fact.
You're supposed to fill your time and your efforts with godly thoughts, godly actions, godly words, and you'll have less room for the ungodly stuff. And you just keep working at that, keep pushing that farther and farther and farther away, and God willing, it'll eventually drop right off, and you will have won the war of your habits.
But mourning and repentance has its place.
Yeah. You still have to mourn and repent of the ugly stuff you do. But understand that it's also a process. God does give grace when we're doing our best to overcome. And like I said, sometimes God will just simply cure you. You wake up one morning and no temptation anymore. And other times you have to really work at it. Because God wants us to show our desire, our stick-to-itiveness. And He will eventually give you the victory over that thing in time. And our running that course is our way of showing our love to Him.
And if you want to know what you haven't overcome yet, just ask your spouse.
Yeah.
Big source of grace.
Okay, Bill.
We're talking about identity. Now, Paul, I forget where, probably help me that. But anyway, Paul said somewhere, it's if I do something, it's not I that does it. Now, I look at that as an identity crisis. He's not identifying with the sin that he does. He's identifying himself as a child of God.
Right.
And if we identify ourselves as a child of God, our propensity to sin becomes less and less of that.
The difficulty with that phrase is it's not me, but the sin that lies within me that's doing this thing. Too many people use that as a cheap cop-out.
As a
Cheap cop-out. It's not me, it's the sin within me, therefore don't judge me. You have no right to judge me because it's not me, it's the sin within me. You know, what you're basically doing is allowing yourself to embrace that sin and guard it carefully because, it's Paul said it's not me, it's the sin within me. It's not what Paul meant. What Paul meant is that he's not yet a complete painter. He's not completely finished. And so stuff isn't completely right yet in him. So don't get too upset at him realizing he's a process. But never, never, never do you ever condone or allow or accept sin. Yes.
Well, the picture that brought to my head when we were talking, when she was asking a question about the washing of hands, I was in Israel, and in the bathroom they had they had the regular water flowing from the faucet, and then they also have this little container which is that at the church, and so then they use that to wash their hands.
Yeah.
Well, when you're washing it and using it, you cannot scrub your hands. So, to me, if you're just putting water over it, just keeps flowing, and eventually something is going to come out. But if you scrub your hands, then when you get the water, it's going to.
Well, realistically, you wash your hands before you do the Netilat Yadayim, which is that ceremony with the hands. So you're just doing a ceremonial washing. It's not a real washing, it's just ceremonial. If your hands have shwitz on them, you need to use soap and water to scrub your hands.
Is that ceremonial washing what the Pharisees were criticizing Jesus about?
Mark 7, exactly. And by the way, the conclusion isn't that anything that possibly ingest is now food. Rather, the kosher food that was at the Pharisees' house, where they were serving that lunch, would have been rendered ritually unclean if you didn't wash your hands the right way. Okay? So the kosher food would be made unclean. That was the argument.
Yeah.
And what Yeshua is saying when he says, thus rendering all things clean, meaning that the Netilat Yadayim, the ritual of washing the hands, didn't make your hands any cleaner than they were before. And that was the point. It had nothing to do with kosher or not kosher, or eating beef versus eating ham. It was simply the ritualness of the cleanness that the Pharisees were aiming for. Okay, let's move on. James chapter 4. Okay, verse 11. Do not speak evil of one another, brethren. He who speaks evil of a brother judges his brother. He speaks evil of the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There's one lawgiver who is able to save and destroy. Who are you to judge another? Okay. Now, context. She's laughing already. Okay. This is often misstated and misdirected. Do not speak evil of one another, brethren. What does the word evil usually mean?
Wrongly.
Excuse me?
Wrongly. Falsely.
Falsely?
Fully.
That could be included, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody.
turn around exactly what it says. Calling somebody evil.
Doing the opposite of God, or pursuit of God.
Yes. Well, wait a second here. Okay, I get you. What I'm getting at is, he who speaks evil of a brother and judges his brother speaks evil of the law and judges the law. So who speaks evil? How do you speak evil of a brother and judge a brother? So a member of the congregation, a member of the greater family of believers. Okay. How do you speak evil of someone and judge them?
Condemn.
Okay. Okay. Pronounce judgment. You made a decision. This person is evil. You judge this person is evil. Okay. Okay. Are we told to do this?
No.
No. Here's and James makes an interesting connection. But if you speak, he who speaks evil of a brother and judges his brother speaks evil of the law and judges the law. What law are we judging?
Torah.
Specifically, what law?
Okay.
God's law.
Thou shalt
Ten
not bear
Commandments.
false witness.
Okay, that's one of them. Okay.
All of the commandments.
Okay. Also, you are to love your neighbor and not endure any wickedness from them. Okay? So loving your neighbor also tells us we should tell them when they're wrong, they're doing something that's lawless by God's standard. Okay? Now, is that speaking evil of them? Or judging them?
I don't think so.
No. Okay? You're doing what you're told. Okay, but when you speak evil of someone, there's almost a required addition in this phrase. Falsely. Or misplaced speaking evil or judging them, you're speaking evil of the law. Because if you're rebuking someone for sin, are you being evil? No. No, it's not evil. But if you're accusing somebody of evil without proof and you're judging them to be an evil person without proof, is that against Torah?
That's gossip.
Yes.
Yeah, it's gossip.
Yes.
Okay? And are we not commanded in Leviticus 17, 19, somewhere in there, that you shall love your neighbor as yourself? Okay? Now, you walk around accusing yourself of the same evil things that you're tempted to accuse other people for doing. Okay. Are you loving your neighbor as yourself then? Okay. What happens then is now you have not only judged your brother, but you have also judged Torah. Because Torah says to love your neighbor, and you say, nah. Now, where are you in relation to Torah?
Violation of it.
Better, worse than that, of course, James is concerned, you are a judge over the Torah. You are judging yourself to have the right to change Torah.
Putting yourself in God's position.
Yeah, you're putting yourself in God's position. Okay? So, is this a serious issue?
Yes.
Why is it such a serious issue?
Basically, you're substituting yourself for God. You're going back to, in essence,
Okay. Not only that, but in the picture of the congregation life, what have you done?
Destroy it.
You're destroying the.
Cause division.
Yeah, you're causing division and you're destroying your brother.
Destroying.
Yeah. Okay. There's a story that goes something like, there was a man once in a village who spoke evil of his rabbi. Later found out that he was wrong, so he went to the rabbi to seek forgiveness. And the rabbi says, okay, I want you to do this. You take a feather pillow, go to the highest building in the town, you rip open the pillow, and you throw all the feathers out into the wind. And come on back. Okay, the guy thinks this is strange. And if he goes and he does, he comes back, he says, okay, Rabbi, I sent out all the pillows, and now the rabbi says, now I want you to pick up every single feather. Okay. And what's your answer?
It's impossible.
It's impossible. You really can't. It's not physically possible. The injury you do to somebody's character can never be fully rescinded or repaired. Because it was going to be somebody who only heard your complaint and never heard your repentance.
Yeah.
And they're going to go around and spread that same misinformation around the people they know. And they're going to do it. And they're going to do it. And some of those people will eventually learn otherwise and correct their position. But if you are not careful to protect the integrity of your brothers in the Lord, you are doomed to commit this kind of error time and again. Okay? So, this is what James is talking about. Okay? Don't judge your brother, because that's God's job. Okay? And if you're not living by Torah because you're judging your brother, then you're also part of the problem. Okay. So there's one lawgiver who is able to save and destroy. Who are you to judge another? Okay. So basically, what James is finishing up in this section saying is, God alone has the right to truly judge somebody and take action. Okay. We don't have that capability. Now, if you're in a situation where you're dealing with serious crime, yeah, you have the responsibility and the right to delve into it and deal with it. But if we're talking about people with bad attitude, people with bad words, people that are not physically damaging people and property, you have to be careful. You have to be more careful because there might be other things going on for which we're not aware. And that person has not transgressed into the area where legally you must take action. Okay, if he's stealing something or he's damaging somebody's property, you must take action. But if it's just attitudes, we have to be careful how we're judging them. Not that people with attitude get a free pass, because God will deal with them for their attitudes. But it doesn't give us the right to judge. Okay. Questions, comments, rebukes? Okay. Take a little break and we'll come back and do the real Bible study.